Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Cinnamon Chat with Amita. And with today's episode, we are completing 3 months of weekly live talk show. You know, this talk show is Sri Lanka's first LinkedIn live talk show. And at the beginning, me, that's Amita Gamage, used to come solo and talk about things. And then later, I realized that I need to bring in other experts to add value to my network. That's how the channel, the program was born. And we have been bringing 23 experts, and today we have the 24th most important person. I would tell you why. We have been talking about a lot of topics, but today we are going to talk about children, a very dear and a very close topic to my heart because I'm also a father of two kids. And to talk about kids, especially the child development uh, of children. So, talking about child development, it has a lot of areas to cover, and especially this is an important topic during this kind of a pandemic era. So, hence the topic of the program, child development during the pandemic era. And I brought a very special person who also uh, is helping children and women in a very special way. Uh, and I would, I believe that she has the authority to talk about this. So let's bring Debbie or Deb Edrisinghe uh, to the screen. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Amita. How are you?
Great. Thank you very much for coming on the show, even though you have a busy schedule looking after kids and women who are needy, who are underprivileged, but you still decided to give us a little bit of time from your busy schedule. So, uh, once again, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Absolute privilege.
Yeah. So now the audience has to know who you are and what you do. Some of them know, but then some of them do not know. So to the audience who are joining from LinkedIn and also those who are joining from Facebook, and there are some who are joining from YouTube. For the benefit of all of them, Debbie, if you could tell a little bit about yourself before we get into child development or the organization that you head, Child Action Lanka, a little bit of yourself, especially about your young age. I'm still curious whether you had this particular dream when you were a young girl. So, a little bit of background.
Wow. Going back to my young age, which is a while now, uh, I I grew up in a very sheltered environment, and grew up with the ideal kind of family. I was born in Colombo, and I was educated partly at Methodist College, and then after that, I went off overseas. I came to Kandy. From there onwards, I went overseas for my studies. But I think something that always pulled me back is the love for Sri Lanka. I love this country, and nothing could keep me away. So, though from time to time I went overseas for my studies, I've always wanted to come back, and I love what I do now. But to answer your question, working with children was never on my mind at that point. I've always been a person who has loved kids. I love, looking after, babysitting kids, doing stuff with children. But I don't think, never in my dreams would I have thought that this is what I was going to be doing at some point in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, then at least did you have a plan to get into social service? Like, how did that thought enter you? Were there any thoughts about helping others as a kid when you were a kid?
I think just with my background and like the environment I grew in, I was always taught to, look out for other people, be caring, helping out. But I honestly didn't know a lot about social work. till I myself ended up getting a job in the field, and I worked for a few international organizations. And that's kind of where I really got exposed into the whole development field. But till then, I think it was part of my lifestyle, just helping people out wherever I saw a need, stepping in. And I think I never saw it as a career, never thought of it as a job or anything like that. It was just part of life. You saw somebody in need, you just went out there and helped them and just did what you had to do and make life happen, I suppose. And I don't think I placed it as, something that was like priority or something that I had to, think of, oh my goodness, today I haven't done a good deed, or, today I haven't done my, good things for anybody. Um, no, it was never like that. I think I just did whatever I could whenever I could. But I remember, it being a big part of my growing up, and I think it was a big thing that my parents instilled into me, and the value of helping people out and being there. And as a kid, I did guiding and little friends and all this, and then it was definitely part of that. You had all these exams that you had to do, helping people out. So I guess I helped people out to pass exams as well. uh, but that's also because I'm a person who loves education, and
Okay.
I've always loved education. So I think, a lot of people call me the eternal student, because I started, ever since I went to preschool, I've never stopped studying. Up to date, I'm still studying. So
Okay.
I think it might have been part of that as well. But I've always been open to the social side, but not in terms of, a development kind of activity in my life.
Okay. So you want to talk about a little bit about your corporate life? Did you after the education, you entered job stream?
Yeah, so I'm a person who loves making lots of plans. Uh, I love having, constantly anybody who sees me with a pen and a paper in my hand, and I know there's a whole technology thing, and you walk in with your laptops, but I'm still a paper and pen person. So I'm always making plans wherever I am. Every few minutes I've always been making plans. So at the age of 16, I'd actually planned my life up to 26, and I knew what I wanted to do then.
Wow.
And I knew the exact steps that would take me to that place. And so that's always been, how I kind of grew up. Um, but I think in terms of when it came to development, that was never part of the plan. And so in my mind, I always thought I'll become a business person. And so my whole educational background is in business management and administration. And I've loved studying about it. And I think in theory, I know so much more about business management than I know about development. And, it's always been, I think the development side came as a heart for it, and as a passion for, what I do is mostly my passion. And that's why I have this saying on my laptop that goes, if you find something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. It's
True.
always play.
Yes.
And so with the number of hours that I put in on work, people think, I'm crazy to be working like that. But for me, it's mostly play, because I
Yeah.
enjoy doing what I do.
Okay. Great. So my next question would be, what triggered you to enter social service? Was there a particular incident that inspired or that pushed you to social service?
I think this is where I'm going to have to disappoint you, Amita. I think a lot of people have this, aha moment that
Yeah.
happened in their life. Suddenly this thing happened. But I think for me, it was more a gradual thing.
Okay.
Um, I because I never knew that there was a whole career in social development. So that was nothing that crossed my radar ever. I mean, if you take my kids, they've grown up. I've got two daughters, and they've grown up knowing the whole thing about, mom does development work. So that's obviously one of the options that they keep tossing around. But in my case, no, it wasn't that. So because of that, I think the whole idea of getting into development was kind of very accidental. Um, having met a very inspiring lady who's sadly passed away now, and she was an English teacher, and she was working with street kids at that point. And because I
Here in
was
Sri Lanka? Here in
in
Sri
Sri
Lanka?
Lanka, in Kandy, and when I met her, she said, I just spoke to her and I said, it's amazing what you do. And how can I possibly help you? What can I do? Because I had my helping cap on, because I was thinking, I'm the person who goes around helping, so I'm happy to help you. But and she said, you know what, Debbie, maybe the best thing you can do is take on this program.
Wow.
um, and I said, me? No, I had a very comfortable life at that point, and I was very happy doing, the little things I was doing. And seeing her, I was really challenged, but it also scared me, because she worked with street kids, and working with street children, given the environment I grew in being so safeguarded and protected, I think as parents, we all want to safeguard our kids and make sure
Absolutely
they
right.
have, yeah, they, make sure that they have the very safe environment. So given that, that's where I grew up in as well. These meeting these kids the first time and seeing what she was doing, I was shocked, but I was also challenged. But when she said, why don't you take it over, I was like, no, I don't think I can do that. I think everyone would have probably expected me to be the person to kind of go and say, look, let me take on, and I'd love to help you. But I got so scared, because meeting those kids was a challenge for me at that point. I got really, really scared, and I said, no, I don't think. But then, it was a long story from there, and it's been a long journey, and I ended up eventually helping out. And before I knew, she migrated overseas because of personal reasons. And before I knew, I ended up, setting up and registering this organization, because I wanted to, have it all clear. And the rest has been history.
Yeah, I know. I mean, amazing. What could happen to you when you meet people?
Yeah, it's true. You never know. You never know when your paths cross what happens thereafter, isn't it?
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
had this question, why kids? But you actually answered for that question as well.
I think no, but even if you ask me again, why kids?
Yeah.
Because yeah, what I always say is there's a million reasons that people can support. Let's say, for example, cancer. Most of us have had a loved one die owing to cancer, and why not support cancer research? Or heart heart attacks and all. We've had different people, so why not? And there's so many reasons out there to support people in different things. And in terms of kids, I think for me, kids are very dear to my heart, but also the main thing being that I feel they're the most vulnerable sector. We often talk about child rights, and there's the 54 articles that were created for child rights globally. All these countries signing up to it. But if
Yeah.
you actually look at it in terms of, you're talking about a child's right to education, their protection, development, in terms of their survival, their best interest, in terms of all these things, I think children, they don't know what's available to them. They don't know what their rights are. B, they're the most innocent and wouldn't be even able to stand up for themselves. And so
Yeah.
I feel like, if somebody stands up for them, that's probably the biggest thing we could probably do, to be able to raise the next generation, because you're talking about another generation of leaders here. This is our future. I mean, we're not saying they're the future generation, because they're already existing, but they are future leaders. It's in their hands that we're leaving everything behind. And if we're not empowering and equipping them, I think we're failing in part of our duties and our responsibility in life, which is why I think kids take prominence in my life.
Yeah. That's amazing. Our gratitude. I'm a parent, so I can very much relate to the story. So, if you want to talk about the story of Child Action Lanka, from from the day one when you took over, and where did you start, and the progression a little bit more, because the
Okay.
audience should find out, like they should know uh, the magnitude or the impact that you are making. So from the beginning, if you could explain, please, the journey.
Right. So we started in 2006 formally, but informally we started about 2014, and started in the city of Kandy because I live in Kandy. So we started in Kandy. And we started actually by renting out a little basement that was mostly used as a garbage dump, but that's what we cleared up. And at that point, we started with using that, and we had 8 kids when we started, and there was no promise of any kind of funding. So I think if anyone is in it for the money, I think it's the wrong job to be in, because the money part doesn't exist. I think a lot of people have that notion, oh, if it's a development work, there's a lot of money in it,
Money.
but there's no money. And in fact, when we started, there was no promise of funding from anywhere. Nobody said, look, I like what you're doing. Let me help you and give you, here's a bundle of money. No, nobody did that. We like my husband and I, we put in our personal funding, and then his parents, our parents, they all, pulled in, and they started, we don't know what you're doing, but here's some money to help you out, is kind of the thing we had from family. And then after that, when my daughter was born, so in Sri Lanka, like when a girl is born, people give you jewelry and they give you cash and all these gifts. So I think she was our biggest donor, because we took all that money and put it into Child Action Lanka, in setting up Child Action Lanka at that point. And then what actually happened is, we were not quite prepared. I think, I think in my mind I thought it's 8 kids, and yes, they were scary, and I have a good joke about it, because having grown up very sheltered, I didn't know all the big bad words in Sinhalese and all that. I learned all of them from these kids,
Okay.
because every time I went, they would come out with all these words, and I never knew what they meant. So
Okay.
when we started out, I think I remember going, I'd stand at the top of the steps to this basement, and it would take me a few minutes to get my courage together to even go down the steps, because I used to be so scared of the kids. And I think the funny part is that till I started working with them, we would see them all over on the streets, and they were there begging, they were selling things, they were
So
walking around.
primarily the kids were street kids.
When we started out, yes. And so even to date in Kandy, most of the kids are street connected children. And so because of that, when we started out there, they were all kids who were used to selling things on the streets, and walking around doing all kinds of, all the mischief around was mostly them. So uh, I think they were more confident than I was, and it took me a long time to get used to them. Uh, but gradually, what happened is, because we started giving food, and we started giving free sports, and kids would just come in to have different activities going on for them. I had people come and volunteer and say, hey, we like what you do, how can we come and help you? And so different people started coming in to do life skill programs. We had to start from basics, from like hygiene, in terms of brushing teeth, washing your face, all that. And but gradually the 8 kids started growing, and then it started becoming 20 kids, 30 kids, and they were all in this little basement. And within about 3 months, it actually went up to about 80 kids.
Wow.
And but that was chaotic, because we had little babies. So even like to date, we have tiny babies, a few weeks old, plus we have 18, 19-year-olds who are with us as well, plus older kids. And so, because Sri Lanka loves so much cricket, these kids would play cricket with anything, including like the baby's toys, diapers, everything were being used as cricket. And so it was quite crazy. And then little by little, we started segregating them and categorizing them into different groups. But that was our journey when we started in Kandy.
So
And then,
the center was running as a day center?
yeah, so what it is it's a, what we do is, like, my strong belief is that children shouldn't be separated from their family. I feel like, no matter, even if your parent is a drunkard, a drug addict, whatever your parent does, a child still looks up to the parent, and nobody can take the place of a parent. And I know that now because, we've been running a shelter program post COVID, and the kids are given everything that they could possibly want, and they still crave to be with their parents, though their parents are in prison, though their parents are, serving time somewhere, doing some crazy stuff. For kids, their parents, that place, I don't think anyone can take. And so because of that, what we did is we established drop-in centers for children. And we told the parents, you can come and leave your kids with us, we'll take care of them from morning till evening, but during this time you can't be seated on the street begging. So Candy is a very small place, everyone knows what everyone does. And so if somebody is actually seated on the street and begging after their child is with us, we would find out very easily.
Yes.
So because of that, what we did is we got the kids with us. Then we started, we had little babies separately. We had our own little preschool. From preschool, then, there's the kids who are going to school. So then we'd send them to main schools. But after school, they come back to us. They'd have lunch with us. And after lunch, they'd have computer, they'd have dancing, counseling, mathematics, English, anything. And it was more of a place of giving safety to kids, because these children, we found some of them, uh, you know, instead of coming and learning something, all they would do is just come and sleep. And the reason they would do that is because the night before hasn't been a very peaceful night, and they would have gone through so many different things. And so
Yeah.
for them, this was like their safe place to be, to be kept calm, and somewhere where they knew no one was going to come and beat them up. No police were going to come and take them for doing something.
Yeah.
And so some kids just came and slept all the time. I mean, every afternoon they just come and sleep. But and in the evenings, the parents would come and take them. On and off, we'd have parents forget to take their children, and so then we'd have to go around town looking for them. But as time went on, then we had a request from Nuarelia. So and then we set up a center there in Nuarelia as well. And that way, I think we kind of expanded all over. So today we are working in 8 different cities, working with a little over 1,000 children now. And they're not all street. Some of them are very street connected, but some of them are just really, really poor kids. So I remember going to Batiklo before we started the Batiklo Center. And, me in all my naivety, I went there and asked the kids. I was trying to just connect with the kids and have a little conversation in my little bit of Tamil that I know. And so I said, what did you eat last night? And they all looked at me like I was mad. So I thought, okay, maybe last night is not a good idea. Okay, what did you eat last afternoon? And then the person who took me there just said, they haven't eaten in 2 days. Can you stop asking that question? And I think that's when reality struck me that, we talk of, poverty, but this is poverty on another level. Our newest center has been in Colombo. And who would have thought, we talk of Colombo as a commercial capital, and we say, people have, I mean, yes, there are poor people, but they have, right?
Yeah.
But we've got kids who come into our centers who, when our centers are closed, especially during lockdown times and all that, they hadn't had meals. I mean, some of them hadn't eaten in 2, 3 days. Some of them came and they were fainting. This is Colombo we're talking about. So, we've met poverty at different levels. Kilinochi Center has been kids, post-war, post-conflict. Most of them have had people, die in their families. They've seen family members being blown up right in front of their eyes. So the mix of kids that we've had has varied, but the program pretty much remains the same, where we focus on education, healthcare, nutrition, and more than anything else, child protection.
Amazing. So the centers are in Kandy, Norelia, Batikalo, Colombo. That's all.
Gaul, Gaul,
Goal. Yeah.
Kalania, Kilinochi, and a
Okay.
little above Kilinochi in another little place called Akkarayan.
So basically, it's about 8 locations. That's a
Yes.
daunting task. So I believe there's a the whole heap of people or a bunch of people who are working with you to look after the operation of all the centers.
Yeah, I've got an amazing, amazing team. I mean, honestly, people think, they try to drag me into all these and try to give me the credit, but I'm mostly in office. So I'm not the one who's on the front lines anymore. And yes, I miss not being with the kids. At the beginning, I remember spending a lot of time with the kids, but as the organization has grown, I've not been able to do that. But there's an amazing team of men and women, and I must emphasize, we've also got guys. I mean, usually in this trade, there's very few guys who would come forth, I think, to want to take care of kids and do things with children. But we've got some amazing guys, and who've been like really good role models for the children. And their commitment, their dedication, they've got like an amazing heart, because it's not like we're working in all the luxury out there. I mean, you go to
It's tough.
Kilinochi and all this, it's really tough, it's hot, it's tough, there's no electricity, the roads are terrible. And for them to be doing it, they're not doing it because of the prestige. There's zero prestige in what they're doing, because they're in the background, right? So nobody sees them. But they've stayed really committed, and so in our 14 now 15-year time, most of them have been working with us, for 12, 13, 14 years. And I'm very, very grateful actually to the team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too. I mean, I can just imagine working with kids. It's not easy. And then with
No.
those harsh conditions, to work with kids for over 10 years, I'm sure there's some divine feeling that is there in them for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm also proud at this moment because my son just became a brand ambassador for your organization. Now he's having lots and lots of planning to work with these kids. So I hope I'm going to show this episode. Especially, I'm going to get him to sit down and watch what he's getting. He has already seen some of the videos, but then nothing like getting it out from the founder. So amazing, I have no
No,
words to
absolutely.
express my gratitude. Yeah.
Absolute privilege for us to be having Nethila on board. I mean, having seen him, because I'm one of those people who actually believe in children, and I believe that they've got an amazing potential to unlock so much, because they are actually living in a completely different period than we are. And
Yes.
compared to as children, where we were at that point is not where they are. And Nithila is such a smart boy. I mean, I've followed his work on LinkedIn. I think he's amazing. I've been inspired. So, absolute privilege for us to have him.
So we have few uh, joining us and commenting. Fazir, good topic selection and a presenter. And we have Anuruddha Chandravansh, nice work, Debbie and Namita. And then we have Dr. Rizwan Jalin, God bless your team for your great effort and bless you. So there are a lot of people out there when they get to know and they want to help, they want to comment and they want to spread the word around. So that's what I'm trying to, do for the benefit of those kids. And then my next question, before I go to the child development part of it, I know that you also help women. Would you like to elaborate a little bit about that side of the story?
I think when we started out, we were very focused on just helping children, and we thought, let's just do the kids. But soon we realized that just helping the children alone wasn't going to take us anywhere. I think there's a quote that says, the hand that rocks the cradle rocks the world. And this couldn't be more true, because what we found is one of the biggest challenges we had was where the kids, when their moms took off to the Middle East for employment. That is what most of them were doing. They were going off to the Middle East. Then the
Yeah.
child would be left with, a father or with the rest of the family. And their education was falling apart. So most children were dropping out of school. But also, on the other hand, there was a huge amount of abuse that was taking place. And there was, like, drunk dads, drunk uncles, anybody, or even the next door neighbor, somebody. And this became quite a serious issue. So because of that, what we started doing was started working with the moms and saying, please don't leave your children. But then the issues that they were having was, my husband drinks, there's no one to take care, I have no money.
Yeah.
Domestic violence was really high, so women getting beaten up really badly, which then led us to actually open a safe home for women as well. So we've got these centers for kids, but we also have like a safe home where women who face domestic violence can come and stay in hiding. So I can't even tell you where it is because it's a secret location.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
yeah, so when they come to us there, then we take care of the legal side of things for them, provide them with counseling, and help them give them certain trades so that they can then get back into life and be a little more independent. But at the same time, we also found that we needed to work closely with the moms if we were going to keep the moms with their children.
Yeah.
So at Cal, one of the things that we hold very dear is that children need to be with their parents as far as is possible,
Difficult.
unless, of course, it's a danger to the child, and the parent themselves are dangerous to the children. In that event, well, things need to change. But if not, if it's for economic reasons, or if it's for convenience reasons or personal reasons, then we would strive and do our very best to make sure that women are kept with the children.
With the
But
kids.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, so but then because of the whole economic system, and women not being financially independent, they were very dependent on the men. So because of that, violence was still high. And so we started creating these little groups called women's groups in our communities. And in this women's group, they also support each other emotionally, but they also have this system where they start collecting and pooling in money together. And then when
Okay.
they reach certain targets, we match fund them, what they do. And through that, then they're able to get loans to start up businesses. We're able to coach them up, we're able to provide them with skill. It might be the little person who's making lunumiris and roti, and maybe if they had a grinder, electric grinder, maybe they can make a little bit more of lunumiris, and because of that they can sell a bit more. So it might be it might be a small loan to help them buy this grinder that they need, little
Yeah.
things like that, that then their group starts loaning to each other, and then they start paying back into the group. So that's been a really good initiative because it's helped. I mean, it's true, somebody can argue and say it doesn't give you the same amount of income you get when you go to the Middle East, but at the same time it doesn't take away the amount of protection that a mother can give her child by being there.
And it
So that's a
stop another child being falling into the street. Yeah. And
exactly.
I can just imagine, we never pay attention to the grinder that we have at home. And imagine it could be the key uh, living or the source of income for someone out there. It's
Yeah.
amazing, what you do. Yeah.
Plus, I
So
think
I mean, yeah.
I think some of the things
Please.
that we take like for granted. I mean, I've had 16-year-olds come and say it's the first time they cut a birthday cake because we gave them a little cake to cut and they've never cut a cake till then. Or their first photograph has been with us at the age of 8 or 9 or something like that. And so little things that we don't take too serious. I mean, how many of us, we walk on the streets, we see these people cleaning the streets, sweeping the streets, and they're just another person there, right? We don't think twice. But because of them, our streets are nice and clean. And
True.
but having worked with these people now, I know their names, I know them personally, I know their life stories, and I know what's going on. And at the end of the day, they're not very different from us.
True. They love their kids. They want their kids to have great future, etc., etc. Yeah, just like
Exactly.
us, just like
Yeah.
us. But they just don't have the means of doing it.
Or the
Yeah,
knowledge, I suppose. They don't know.
yeah,
A lot of our moms, they can't read or write. So very often when we have a list of something where they have to sign off, we get a whole list of thumbprints on it, because I and they are so grateful that their children can read and write. So that's the little difference it's made. I mean, the other day there was this mom who came, and her 9-year-old son was reading out a list to her, and she was crying and crying, and she said, "I can't believe my son can read." And we don't think so much about things like that, do we? So,
I get goosebumps here, like amazing. Thank you very much for sharing these stories, because the society out there should find out, should know. Sometimes I know you have no time to do propaganda or anything like that, but at least in this kind of a place, thank you very much for letting us hear the stories. So Anuruddha says, Child Action Lanka is always doing their best. So wish you all the very best and God's blessings. We have Manjula. I don't know whether you would be answering, but he's according to him, because of the COVID, the schools, the education pattern has changed. As a result, education pattern has changed drastically with the distinctive rise of e-learning, whereby teaching is undertaken remotely and on digital platform. How do you see the effectiveness of new learning system for children? Uh, uh, I think Manjula, uh, if a child can still learn through e-learning, I would say the child is lucky compared to the children that Debbie and her organization is looking after. But would you want to add a little bit on how do you educate these kids? I mean, you don't do you have a school also?
yes, we do have a school as well. But I think especially during the COVID time, what happened was, when the whole lockdown process happened, our centers were forced to shut down. Now we got special permission to bring in the staff, and the teams, they started doing all kinds of activities, but then we couldn't get anything out because we're talking about, e-learning is great. And yes, Manjula, I would love if our kids have that opportunity. But sadly, when it comes to technology, we're also talking electricity, and not everybody has electricity in some of the areas that we work. So in those instances, I think we were quite challenged, and we had to think out of the box. Now, one of the initiatives we carried out during the lockdown period was our teams went out. They hand wrote study packs for the kids, and they put it into little packs for them. They took little toys and biscuits and all kinds of snacks. But on the pretext of giving them a study pack, they also went to visit them in their places of where they were living, whether it was a house or under a drain or wherever it was, just to see how the children were faring. Because I think the scariest part was that we knew what their background was, and knowing that during lockdown they were locked down with their abusers.
True.
Say if it was the father who was abusing or the mother who was abusing, the kids had no option, and they were locked there and they couldn't get out. So the only way we could go is, we couldn't go in and threaten the parents, because we didn't want the parents to feel like we're coming in as spies. So we had to be very careful in what we were doing. So we took all these goodie bags for them, went out, and then we, gave out these packs to them. And while we were there, while they're eating the biscuits, sit down and have a little chat. How are things at home? How's your mommy? Is she going out? How's daddy? What's he been doing? Things like that. And then what we did is we actually started coding kids after the visit, to code them whether they were on a red zone, on orange, on a green. So green meant they were pretty much safe. Red
Yeah.
means they were in danger. And from all our centers, I think the most number of reds we had was in Kandy, because they were street children.
Yeah.
And so because of that, yes, we would have loved to bring them into our centers and have the whole e-learning thing happen, because we've got, computers at the centers. But that wasn't a practical move at that time. So the
Yeah.
practical thing for us to do was, we had government officials say that these kids needed to be removed from those areas because they were in danger.
Yes.
And so it went against anything that we've done, where we had all these drop-in centers, but they've all closed down. That's where we started a shelter for children. And these kids ended up coming to stay with us temporarily at the shelter. And the thing, I think one of the times that nearly reduced me to tears during that point is when one of these little girls, she was 12 years old, and it's the first time she's had her own bed to sleep on. And she said, now people won't realize I'm a street child. And I thought, oh my God, for us, when we say street kids, we say it with a lot of pride because for me, I know they've gone through so many challenges. And when they come there, they're still smiling and they've got hope. So for me, they're very strong, very resilient kids. And that's why I call them street kids with a lot of pride. But for
Yeah,
them, it was a stigma that was attached to them. And, she just said, now nobody will call me a street child because I have a bed. And I was thinking, that was a very, so e-learning would be great. But I think we still need a lot of development and infrastructure to make that happen.
yeah,
Maybe in the future.
yeah. Maybe in the future. Yeah, this is so amazing story. So Jalia says, great work, Debbie. Sorry, did I get your name correct? You are valuing their lives and bring them up to the society as responsible persons, obviously with directing to the correct paths where they can carry along with. Yeah, so there's a lot that you do, and then there's a lot of people who understand what you do. So my duty is to make sure that their stories are heard through you, so that a lot of other people could help, not only by coming to your organization, but I'm sure, uh, I mean, when you were talking about the harassment at home, I'm sure during COVID-19, kids, even probably our kids, were more vulnerable for a lot of pressure from us because the parents were going through a lot of pressure. So
Hmm.
imagine the street kids. uh, yeah, so
Yeah.
it's great what you have done. So
Thank you.
coming back to our main topic, what is child development? I know with all this background, uh, what is child development? How do you define
So I
development
think
of
child development is the different stages that a child goes, not only from the time that they are born, but from the time of conception.
yeah,
And so, how a child, in what environment a child is conceived, under what kind of circumstances a child is conceived, also plays a huge role.
yes,
So I've seen, children who grow up with a lot of rejection, but they were conceived out of, it might have been an accident. Maybe the parents just didn't want another child. Maybe the parents kind of thought, oh my goodness, this is such a nuisance. And so because of that, that sense of rejection has been something that the child has always carried and is unable to explain. There's children who are very timid, who always want to hide
yeah, the
because of
psychological
the,
impact.
sometimes also, exactly. And sometimes, the kind of uh, environment that the mother has been in during that time. So I
True,
think
true. I mean,
development starts,
over there,
yeah,
I can resonate. I mean, I can remember the kind of movies we watched or the songs we listened to when my wife was pregnant. We were very careful about what the kid was, listening while
yeah,
the kid is in the mother's womb. I mean, can
exactly.
everybody do that, or would everybody would bother to do so? Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
I think
So
I think one of the things that really upsets me sometimes is that some of these moms, I mean, I meet a lot of couples who can't have kids, who would love to have children, uh, and they would basically do anything to have a child. And then the street families, for them having children is like, I don't know. It's a very easy thing. But they don't
yeah,
have children sometimes for the same reason we have them. And we have kids, we want them to be a part of us. And, we instill so much. I mean, I know, Amita, you do so much with your sons and trying to, raise them and make them amazing people. And but very often with these families, we see that, a child's value to them is as long as the child can earn an income.
yeah,
And so, as a baby, they love having the child around because, when they're seated on the street with a baby, who doesn't give money, right? And then
yes,
when the child is bigger, 14, 15 years old, then they send them to sell things on the street. And so they earn an income. But during that time, when the child becomes a bit, restless and is running around, then they're a nuisance. So nobody wants them then. So then they get thrown around from place to place. And I think in the process of development, for us, it's making a child go from the stage of being dependent to making that child independent. So at Child Action Lanka, our tagline is transforming lives. And so what we say in transforming lives is also not just changing them physically, but also changing their mindset. And so when we say
Emotionally,
development,
emotionally,
exactly. Yeah.
psychologically. Yeah,
Exactly. So I think we're talking in terms of a holistic kind of development, whether it's social, whether it is emotional, whether it is spiritual, whether it's physical, whatever. It could be cognitive, it could be, anything. But we're talking about a rounded approach and looking at everything, which is, I think, it comes from our families, it comes from our environments. It's not one of those things that just comes from school. So I
true.
think when it comes to development, if we think, when my child goes to school, everything is going to be perfect, that's not going to be development.
No, no way, no way. Yeah. So I'm sure this is a great message to the parents who are listening and who think, okay, I'm sending my kids to school, so I'm done. He's fully developed child. No, there's a lot of things that you need to look at. And then, Debbie, you are doing it to hundreds and thousands of kids out there. So we have Anamika. She says you are a blessings to all the children. God bless you. I would like to be part of you in case if I can do anything. Thanks. Anamika, I'll put you in touch with her once when the program is over. I'm sure she could contribute. I would like to say contribute, than saying help, contribute to this great cause. Thank you very much. So, even though we listen to a little bit of how COVID-19 has affected children in different way, how COVID-19 has affected these kids, uh, their development actually.
So basically, the only a lot of these children, they love coming down to our centers. The reason they love coming to our centers is because it gives them an opportunity to be free. They don't need to take on the responsibilities of being little adults, and because we've got even 8, 9 year olds who are taking care of 4 or 5 of the other siblings, and becoming almost like little adults and having to take on adult responsibilities. So when they come into the centers, they can just be like normal kids. We make sure that it's a friendly, respected, loving, caring environment for them. And so I think when these children, had during the COVID time, especially when they had nearly no place to go, even if they were on the streets, then they were put into different places. We assisted some of the families with places to go to as well. But one of the hardest parts was of them having to then cope with mental health issues or mental conditions of the adults around them. We're talking about daily wage laborers
Yeah,
who couldn't get their money. We're talking about alcoholics who couldn't have their alcohol. We're talking about drug addicts who couldn't have their share of drugs for the day. You're talking about prostitutes who were so used to going out there and earning, the 5,000, 6,000 rupees that they did for the day. And these were parents and adults who were getting really, really desperate because their addictions were not being fed. And so then they were taking it out on the kids, and a lot of the kids were getting physically harmed. They were being treated really badly. And I think because it's social media, I probably shouldn't go into the detail of it, but when we finally saw the kids, we were shocked at some of the results that we saw. And it was not that same carefree child that came to us. And as a result, even now, like now all our centers are again up and running around the country. But one of the things we see is that the way it has kind of turned back the clock in the minds of the children. And
yeah,
so because of that, the way they act, the way they talk, they've almost taken on those, what they saw in the adult lives and what they saw in the environments around them. And it's very sad to see little kids behaving like their parents do.
yeah,
And this was never the case because they always saw the difference and they knew that's not what they wanted to be. But being under that lockdown situation has put so much pressure on them that I think children lost out a lot on their childhood.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, forget about the child development. They just lost
Yeah.
their childhood for few
A whole
months,
year. Yeah.
whole year. Yeah, a whole year eventually.
So
Yeah,
talk about development. I think they didn't have much chance for development, but at least even to enjoy just being a child, I feel like a whole year of being a child was robbed off them, which they'll probably never get again.
yeah, I know. So uh, these are stories that the society should know, and I think this conversation would change entirely how I look at a. I mean, I know if you go to Colombo, Senanaik Junction, uh, or maybe even Kanath Junction, there are ladies who carry different children on different days. It's the same lady.
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
probably they probably hire the kids. And as a parent, I want to help, and at the same time, I consider, okay, am I encouraging this to happen? So
Yeah.
you get stuck. The traffic light is red, and I need to stay there for 1 minute, and this lady is there with the kid. Should I help? Shouldn't I help? Should I help? Shouldn't I help? Oh, I really don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is your advice to parents? Now, when I say parents, I recently heard of a story of well-to-do family where the father has suicided, and now the mother and the kid is living alone. So this could happen to anyone. We never know what could happen to the kids. So what kind of advice you could give to parents, irrespective of their social status, about
I think
kids?
I think one advice I would give is kids are never expecting they don't expect big things. They don't expect parents to provide them with all the big luxuries. I think sometimes we measure ourselves as parents by what we can provide in terms of materialism to our kids, in terms of can we give them the latest this or the latest that, and create all those material things. But I think for children, it's those little memories. I think if we look back on our childhood, what we remember is the memories that were created for us and how it made us feel. And those feelings is something that's really, really important. And I think it's something that parents, because we're so caught up in being busy,
Yeah.
we're so caught up on our devices, including myself. I'm totally guilty of it. So I'm not even trying to act innocent here. But we're so caught up in running out for our meetings and having our chats that we forget to create these memories for our kids and that feeling of making them feel special. But if there's one thing they're going to remember, it's not the latest laptop that you bought them. It's about how you made them feel. And I think that is a really, really important thing. And for any dads out there who have daughters, I have a little bit of advice,
Please.
if I may. But her first love is as a man is a dad, and the standard that he sets is what she's going to expect from another man. So if you don't want her to take nonsense from another guy, and if you don't want her to suffer abuse, if you don't want her to go through all that, make sure that you treat her like a princess, so she's only used to being treated as a princess and knows her real value. A lot of the kids that go in for things like suicide and all that, is they have huge identity struggles that you think they've got everything on the outside, and but deep inside they're struggling with rejection, not feeling special, not feeling that extra time. Giving them that time, I think, is the most important.
Yeah. I don't have daughters, but then I'll take that advice to apply on my two boys. Yeah, but
Yeah.
we always hear the story about father is the first love to a daughter, but then you gave a more deeper meaning into it. And then we have few more minutes to complete our discussion. Uh, what is your advice or input to the society? What can society contribute to prevent these happening?
I think one of the things that I've seen is um, people feel like there's a huge class. I know we don't talk about it, but there's a imaginary or an invisible class system in our society, and people see these kids, these communities right down at the very bottom. I know I've had teachers come and get offended that they've asked to come and teach these children, though we were paying the normal market rate. And they said, who did you think I was to come and teach kids like this? And they've got offended and walked away. And I think my message to society is, at the end of the day, you might be born with something a little more in terms of materialism. I might have been born with a lot less. But at the end of the day, there's nothing different from you and I. At the end of the day, we're all going to return back to the ground, and we're not taking anything with us. So in terms of humanity, if we can just lend a hand, join together. I mean, we are not in competition with anyone. The only competition is ourselves. And so if we can join together, I think there's so much more we can do for each other.
Yeah, so that's a great message to the society. So I want to know, out of this whole thing that you have been doing for so many years, more than a decade, how many lives do you think you have impacted directly and indirectly? I really don't expect you to keep a count, and maybe it's unfair for me to ask, but I also want the society and our viewers to know the kind of impact you have made. So we want to throw some numbers out.
Right. So to date, since we started working in 2014 informally, and 2004 and 2006 formally, we worked with over 17,000 children who've actually passed through our centers. But I think that would be direct. But when you say indirect, we are talking about their families. We are talking about the sisters and brothers who don't come. You're talking about the communities that they live in, their neighbors that we go and talk to. Because even when it comes to things like child safety and all that, we sometimes, if you can't count on the family, then we might count on the neighbors to look after and let us know if something's happening. So we might provide the neighbors with necessary training. So in terms of that, I think Child Action Lanka has gone way beyond 30, 40,000 people, which I haven't kept a track of, sadly. So sorry, Amita.
No, no problem. No, what I'm trying to think is, 17,000 kids going through your centers. You have done your best as a team to prevent them becoming uh, drug addicts or thieves or, you know, men or women who are doing antisocial things. So imagine, if not for the program that you run, the fate of these 17,000 kids would have been totally unsure. Yeah. uh, because who else would take care of them, right? I mean, let me ask you this question also. uh, there are these two extreme ends where they could come to your organization, or they could be just street kids uh, with their parents. In between, okay, I know they could get caught to something, and then maybe they could be taken to the police station and then eventually end up in a home. That's if the legal system get involved. If not, are there many organizations who are really helping them in between?
There are quite a few organizations that actually work with kids, but I think Child Action Lanka is probably the only one, or nearly the only one, that works with street children. And there's a lot of people who work with disabled kids. There's people who work with orphans and abused children. And there's a lot of different programs out there, and there's an amazing network there actually. That I'm really proud of, and I'm part of a lot of them, because I feel like that's where our strength is, in joining together, because we can all be standing on our own and trying to do things alone, and we'll never be effective. So as much as we can join together, that's where our strength is. But in terms of street kids, there aren't a lot of organizations that work with street kids because of the challenging nature of working with them. They're there today, and tomorrow you don't know where they're going to be. They might turn up a month later, and then they're sometimes very demanding, and they feel like it's your responsibility to take care of them. But at the end of the day, I think it's because they don't know any better. So yeah.
So we have Ashok Herath, who says, "Great work. Thank you, Ashok, for joining us." I want to ask you the last question. If somebody wants to help a kid, or help your organization to look after a kid in some way, what kind of things I'm now thinking in so many ways, how can I help you by way of connecting you to my network? So that's
Yeah.
something that I'm thinking. If somebody wants to help, what kind of help is kind of welcome?
I think just trying to find the right people to come and work with these kids is really hard. And so, what we do welcome is volunteers to come and help out with. And sadly, I don't know. Yeah, somehow or the other, we've had more overseas volunteers come than locals. And so we've had, over 800 overseas volunteers come and work with us. Some of them working for years and years. Um, but somehow or the other, it's the locals that we seem to have missed. And when it's overseas, we also have to work with translators for them, and then you have to get them inducted into the culture and how things work. But I would love to be able to welcome more local volunteers as well to come and join us. If you're from overseas, yes, it's great, we're so grateful. But it's amazing to have locals who feel like we want to give back to our community. So if there's anyone out there who feels like you have just maybe a few hours a week, or even once a month or something like that, would be great to have anybody.
You just got one volunteer. I'll definitely be helping you.
Thank
And
you.
definitely, and I'm
Thanks
going
so
to
much,
bring a lot of
Ms.
people as
Amita.
well. Any other than volunteering, is there anything, materials to anything else?
I would say, rather than us saying this is needed or that is needed, it's much better when people do come and see, and when they become a part of the program, and then they feel like, maybe this is what I can contribute. Because whether it is, in terms of teaching or sports or doing creative stuff with children, doing motivation with children, doing extra programs with them, or with the parents, doing parenting programs, counseling programs, or even health and healthcare programs, health camps, anything like that is possible. But even if not, coming into office, seated and helping us write grants, helping us fill forms, we are forever loaded with loads and loads of paperwork. Even if it's something like that, that's your strength, or the whole software part of things, coming and helping with data entry and things like that, it's still more than welcome. So I think there's so many different areas that people can get involved in.
Wow. Okay, so that's a lot of areas for people to come and help. So I'll be reposting these videos in my other channels. So I hope you would get a lot of calls asking how can we help. Yeah. And then we have the last comment. That's Mr. Gonzal. I'm willing to join. Thank you very much. He's the
Thank you.
former managing director of Nivasi Developers and with a huge network. Thank you very much for uh, showing your interest to help. And then, so uh, that's the end of our program with so much of messages and so much of emotions. Honestly, you are you are a divine person who is coming from somewhere and helping these kids. And thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart. And we always in this program we always offer a book to somebody. It's not a someone winning a book or anything like that, but somebody would always walk away with a book by the courtesy of Pick a Book. Pick a Book is a book reading club. I will also talk to them about how they could help you, because they also have a junior club. These are paid programs, but they also run a lot of things to enhance kids. I will talk to the founders. So today, Manjula is walking away with a book. He asked a good question, and where we had to open and tell a lot of stories. So, Manjula, please inbox your address and the telephone number. We will courier you a book courtesy of Pick a Book. At the same time, please visit www.pickabook.club. Thank you very much, Debbie, for. I have no words to thank you. I'm so glad that I decided suddenly. Okay, let's get Debbie on the show. So it is going to open a lot of doors and windows and gates to uh, to get this help coming in your way. in the way of the kids. So thank you very much for the contribution, those great emotional stories. I mean, I'm guilty of not appreciating what I have, even though I'm from originally from Australia. I'm sure we have got into our comfort zones and not appreciating whatever we have. So, any last thought before we wind up the show, Debbie?
Last thought is, I think, let's join hands together. We are stronger together than alone. So I don't think I need to be doing this alone. I've got an amazing team, but we can be much stronger when everyone else joins together. So I think having people like you, Amita, thanks so much for giving this opportunity, and thank you for being so open to asking all the questions and listening to it. But it's an absolute privilege and honor for me to have been on this show with you. And I look forward to days ahead and doing more things together with more people and
Yeah.
networking
No.
further.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. And then for everyone, please join us again next week for another great talk show here, another episode, 25th episode. And good night and stay safe.